We had a conversation yesterday with Cliff Averill, who was kind enough to join us and talk about some of what he saw in week one. And this was in Seattle and outside of Seattle. And Bump, he brought up something really interesting. And we had seen this from a couple listeners before. And that was whether or not some changes to the preseason, including getting preseason reps, might affect the product that we end up seeing in week one. Because week one is sloppy, right? Not just in Seattle. Yeah. Week one felt pretty sloppy for quite a few teams. Here's what Cliff said to us when we asked specifically about the defense.
Preseason, guys not getting that many reps. The first time you're actually getting live contact and bringing guys down to the ground and real tackles and different things like that is week one for a lot of these guys. At most, maybe they have 20 reps in preseason, to be honest with you. Veterans are just trying not to get hurt. So I think that's what we've seen in particular for the defense.
He's right. At most 20 reps. And some of these guys, I don't remember Dre Jones having any reps at all. He might have had one.
Dre Jones? I don't remember him at all. I think he had a couple.
Yeah, I don't know how many Reed, Jones, and Edwards Jr. had
Reed
as your starting defensive line.
But it was nothing.
Nothing notable.
Less than 10 maybe.
Yep. Obviously, Witherspoon didn't get any because he's been injured. Not that he had any in week one. Obviously, he has a chance to return in week two, but he's not really part of the conversation about the defense just yet. Same with Jamal. But, I mean, a lot of these guys, Quandre, Bobby, certainly Jordan, right? Like, these guys weren't out there. And I always have this feeling, Bump, like maybe it's just like an old school mentality people have of being like, you got to get out there in the preseason. Because if I were a head coach, I probably wouldn't play a lot of guys in the preseason either. I'd be like, God, how dumb am I going to feel if they get hurt? And these are veterans who know what they're doing. But then what do you give up?
Oh, man, you give up learning each other's strengths and weaknesses in a live setting. You can be at practice. Practice is so controlled. Practice is so controlled that every play is scripted, right? Our wide receiver coach when I was in the league, Robert Prince, who is with the Cowboys, I believe, right now, he used to come up to us and give us the script. We talk about scripts for the NFL during the regular season. For practice, he would say, okay, against this play, we're going to see this coverage and so forth. So we can kind of start to see the defense and learn. And,
like take shape. And
exactly. And kind of plan for stuff that we're going to see during the game. They used to give us a script. So when you're in the preseason, you have an opportunity to not know what that team is going to really do and rely on your training and communication. That's what you lose. The only thing I have to say about that, I believe that preseason is important. Back in Wyman's day, they played 6 of them things. That's way too much. God. 6 preseason games, that is nuts.
How many regular season games were in Wyman's day? They weren't at 12, were they? They were still at 16.
He was at 16.
So you had 6 preseason games and 16 regular season games?
Yeah. So 2 buys at one point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's insane.
It's nuts. So there's value in preseason games. But then I go back, and it depends on your situation, right? So I go back to 2020 when there were no preseason games, and the Hawks just went out there and played in an empty stadium. And honestly, that was one of the greatest years for an analyst because we got to sit in a suite every single game and watch it. Oh, my God.
It was very weird covering because you could see players still kind of acting out like the come on crowd.
Yeah, and you could hear conversation. It was weird.
Yeah, it was very weird.
But in that year where they did not have preseason games, they open up 38-25, beat Atlanta. 35-30, beat New England. 38-21, beat Dallas. 31-23, beat Miami. 27-26, they beat Minnesota. Then they finally fall to Arizona in overtime. All right, so that shows, look, maybe some teams don't need it. But then I look at just the roster on this team, right? You got Russell Wilson. You got Carlos Hyde, Chris Carson as your running backs, veterans, right? You got DK. Was that his rookie year or second year? You got DK. You got Lockett leading the charge at receivers.
Lockett had 200 yards in that Arizona game, by the way.
Yeah, balling. Veterans, right? Then I go over to the defense, okay? Jamal Adams. Damn, Jamal's been there this long. Dang, Jamal Adams is there. You got Shaquille Griffin, who's a veteran. Bobby Wagner's there. Lano Hill. Quentin Dunbar didn't last long, but he's a veteran. Bruce Irvin, KJ Wright, Jaron Reed. So you look at the team and you go, for that team, that worked because they were not relying on rookies or second-year guys. You got all of these leaders out there who understand each other, how to communicate and how to play the game. So I think with this team, with this Seahawks team, they probably could have benefited. Now, you do have some veterans, but you have veterans coming over from a different team. Jay Reed is new. Dre Jones is new. Mario Edwards is new. Devin Bush is new. You're missing Jamal. Julian Love is new. So just because there's so many new guys to the situation, they probably could have benefited from playing in the preseason game, but you risk injury. You don't want guys to get hurt.
Outside of just, being able to get reps, There's also, Cliff says, kind of like a knowledge and an understanding that comes with development as a defensive player. Tell me what you thought about what Cliff had to say here.
Play within the scheme. You'll make the plays you need to make. And when you realize that you're a chain link and everybody needs to do what they need to do their part for other people to have success, but more so than anything, the defense to have success, I think that's when you start to have great defenses. And when you're young, that's just something that has to be learned over time.
He says great defenses realize and great defensive players realize they're a link in the chain. That's something a young defense doesn't get right away.
Yeah, they don't, because young defenses, you're so concerned about you, and you should be because you are a link in that chain, that you kind of ignore how you can help someone else efficiently. Sometimes you just get lost in the mix. I think Trey Brown was a perfect example of that this past game because he seemed a little lost at times, but he's young, and you expect that. As Cliff Averill is talking, I'm thinking about that song, "Some bones connected to the eye bone, the thigh bones connected to the eye bones." That's what I'm thinking. I go, that's a defense, right? Everything's connected. And when you have a lot of new additions, the connectivity isn't what it would be. Even if this is a defense that got carved up years ago, they still know, like, all right, I know how to help my boy out and how my job affects everybody
and
else.
It feels like almost, yes, the reps in the preseason were important, especially for the veteran players too, just to get out there and like get your body ready and get ready for it. But it seems like this part of it was really at play in week 1 for the secondary, because if there was one major thing, it was the secondary and the communication there just falling apart. Like, yes, you wanted to see more of a pass rush. You wanted to see Dre Jones get more involved than he was. You wanted to see, Darrell Taylor, any of those other outside linebackers get more involved and actually get a sack. Like, you wanted to see that, but it felt like communication on the back end is really where this fell apart.
Yeah, that back end. It's communication too, but I think the coaches got to take some responsibility as well.
Yeah.
Because they're putting these guys in those situations, or the information or the coaching didn't stick. So as coaches, they take that as a challenge too. You heard Pete Carroll say, look, I didn't do enough to get the guys ready for the second half. And he's a great coach, a great leader. He's going to do that. But it's everybody. It's never one person. It's never one play. It's never one scheme. It's a bunch of events that happened that led to what we saw. And you can throw in the preseason as well. You can throw in the rookies, the new guys. There's a lot of stuff that needs to be fixed. That's why I'm so excited for this week too.